Next up, guys, we got a considerably more fun booking. We've got Jonathan Martinez taking on Adrian Yanez. Yanez, I think is how he said his own name. So gonna try and do him that respect. He is correcting folks this week on his name and letting people know how it's really pronounced. So bless him for it. You take a look at the measurables on this fight, guys. We've got two 29-year-olds, right? Virtual age parity here, a couple months older for Adrian Yanez. And you look at the reach, it's a half-inch reach advantage for Yanez, and it is a 1-inch height advantage for Jonathan Martinez. So virtually identical frames for these two guys, virtually identical age for these two guys, and pretty similar level of experience as well. 22 professional bouts for Jonathan Martinez. And for Adrian Yanez, just 20 professional bouts, so two bouts less than Martinez. But either way, both of these guys, very seasoned fighters, 29 years of age, and I think this is a UFC trying to match up two prospects in the featured bout of the evening and saying which prospect is coming and which one's going. And not to say that, whoever loses this fight is dropping off a cliff, but just to say right now, at 29 years of age, who's ready to go right now and get this push up in the division? And I think that for Jonathan Martinez, his last time out, if he had finished Said Nurmagomedov, if he had went out there and put a real stamp on that performance, then maybe he's fighting up into the, top 10 or the top 15. But instead, it was a very close fight. It could have went either way. I think a lot of people, might have thought that he was fortunate to get that one, but certainly it was a fight that was well within the margins. When you look at a guy like Yanez, his last fight, he was landing some good shots. He was getting off on some boxing, but unfortunately, he got overconfident and he was swinging wildly in the pocket with a guy who could really box in Rob Font, and a guy that, despite not having the greatest finishing record in the UFC, he has landed a lot of knockdowns. He has landed a lot of shots with power. He has busted up people's faces. The thing is, Rob Font has typically been let down by his durability, not by his power. His ability to hurt people has never been the question. It's just his ability sometimes to take it on the return because he's a little bit older in the division. He's a little bit slower with his reaction time. So I think that when you look at Adrian Yanez's last fight, he kind of forced himself into the pocket with a guy who really knows how to box. I thought Yanez was going to win that fight, but I thought it was a difficult fight. I wasn't under the illusion that Rob Font is a gimme. And Rob Font caught him. He got the best of him. And Rob Font has shown himself to be extremely tough and durable against some of the best fighters in the division. Look at what he was able and willing to endure against Corey Sandhagen, where granted that was just a grappling domination, but he survived several really deep choke attempts late in that fight. Look at similar experiences. So I just look at a guy like Adrian Yanez. I think he could bounce back. I think he can come back and find some momentum again in this division. Did he beat the highest level guys on his march through? Tony Kelly, Davey Grant, Randy Costa, Gustavo Lopez, Victor Rodriguez, Brady Wong. No, those are not the highest level guys, but it showed me that the UFC was trying to put this guy in a position to succeed developmentally. They were really trying to get, a good matchup for him. And the Tony Kelly fight, I think, translated for him. I think it kind of broke him through a little bit and was a little bit of that star-making performance. So you look at a guy like Adrian Yanez, and he built up a big fan base, a big following, and then it didn't go his way. The other thing is true of Jonathan Martinez. He's been having all this success, but he's very quiet about it all. You'd never know unless you were watching the UFC week in and week out. So he's kind of a nightmare for the UFC in some regards, right? Where he's a really good fighter. He's very difficult. Nobody's going to want to fight this guy. But then if he does go out there and get the win, he's not going to set anybody's hair on fire with the interview. He's not going to go out there and try and market himself or be interesting. And I don't say this to be disrespectful. I'm sure there's a lot of Martinez fans out there too, but he's just not caught that same kind of fire on social media. He hasn't done the same kind of marketing. You don't hear as much from him in the media and in interviews, and he's not as public a person. And that's a trade-off in your career. And so I think that for a guy like Martinez, maybe he is just a silent killer. Maybe he's going to come in here and use his leg kicks and his kicking ability to tune him up. But I think that Adrian Yanez has dealt with a bunch of kickers. I think that when he fought the fight against Randy Costa, we saw how he's normally willing to deal with adversity. He was getting jabbed up in that fight. He was dealing with a longer opponent, and his opponent was landing some big thunderous kicks there as well. but he was able to react well. He was able to stay in his face, and he was able to break him with pressure, with power. And I do think that Yanez has real power in the pocket. I think he's a very clean boxer. So this is a tricky fight, where I thought that at the minus 110 range, I leaned towards Yanez, but I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it. It seems like there's money coming in on the Martinez side, and that's all love, but I'm probably going to wait and kind of see what happens here, see what kind of plus money number might appear on an Adrian Yanez's side here, because I do think it's a what have you done for me lately sport. And I think people are going to say, hey, this guy just got knocked out. And so I'm out on him. But for me, I think he's a guy that's tough. I think he's a guy that the UFC wants to market and promote, broadly speaking. And so I think that they're trying to put him back on track here by putting him against tough, solid opposition and proving, hey, that's just a blip along the radar. I could still win these fights. I could beat good fighters. So that's what I expect this weekend. I think he's going to get back in the win column here. It might be a closely contested decision, but I also think that Jonathan Martinez is not above being chin checked himself. These guys have fought common opponent Davy Grant, and Davy Grant, you could say you thought he won the decision against Yanez, but you can't say that he knocked out Adrian Yanez, and you can say that. He knocked him clean out against Jonathan Martinez, put him down badly, badly, badly in that spot. And that was a spot where I think a lot of people expected Jonathan Martinez to easily roll and kind of clean up a guy like Davy Grant, and instead he ended up getting folded there as a favorite. So I do think that public perception kind of comes and goes on these guys. I could poke holes in the resume and the recent run of a guy like Jonathan Martinez. Said Nurmagomedov, that's a great win. But again, a lot of people thought that was a controversial win. Cub Swanson, he's a guy who's a little bit past his best, with all due respect. Vince Morales, a guy that's really struggled at the UFC level. Alejandro Perez, a guy that's, very old and, probably not long for the UFC at this point. 34 years of age, excuse me. He's not as old as I thought, but he does have 5 losses inside the distance. So again, that was a guy who's got 5 losses inside the distance. Jonathan Martinez was not one of them. So I think that they're trying to do, oh, yeah, this is great. Shout out to Just Win Baby, says, no more USADA, best news of the day. Yeah, I don't know what they were accomplishing anyway, so cheers to that. And then we've got Contender View says, Davy Grant is so game, though. Absolutely. I love Davy Grant. Fun fighter, but I'm just pointing to the difference in how these two guys were able to deal with him. Davy Grant probably lost the first round pretty clean against Martinez, but then he came out there and with a straight arm English banger gave him the old sleep tight. So I do think that Adrian Yanez is a student of the game. I think he's going to study a lot of Martinez's film, and I think he's going to come in with a pretty good game plan here to try and catch him on the chin. So I like this fight. I think it's a great scrap. I think it's 2 fun fighters, but I like Adrian Yanez here to bounce back, get his momentum going again.